So you've got an idea. You can see your vision. You keep having the same reoccurring thought. You've got that feeling deep in your stomach that there's more to life than what you're currently living. You've been feeling that call for a while to do greater things in the world. There's patterns that keep showing up in your life no matter what you do. You know it's time for change. So what's stopping you? So the real irony is that the thing that stops so many people is the fear that they don't know how to start or when. So the good news is that I'm here to tell you today that now, I know wholeheartedly is the perfect time to begin. And I'm going to show you exactly why. Because you're not sure, how can I be so sure? So I'm going to share with you today a very powerful model that I've used for many years with many clients from Prochaska and DiClemente, and it's called the cycle of change. And I'm going to show you how you are already, even if you don't feel like it, in the process of transformation, and that you've already moved through the first stage without even knowing it. So let's begin. Why I know that you've already begun is that the moment that you had that thought, the feeling, the idea, you heard that nudge, that call, the intuition, that is when the transformation began. You've already begun. You already started. You started in that moment. Because the first stage of the cycle of change is pre-contemplation, otherwise known as denial. So denial is a powerful psychological defense, and it's when we are not yet ready to feel the feelings, acknowledge things, accept things, and therefore in that stage action is not possible. So we cannot begin because we aren't fully aware of or are not ready to access our feelings, our thoughts, in order to take action. And I know that you're not there. At the very least, I know that you're in contemplation, which is the next stage, because that is when it starts to come into our awareness. We start to acknowledge, actually, maybe there's a cost for us to be where we are. Maybe actually this change is really important for me. And we can actually start to see the benefits of shifting and changing, taking the leap, being brave, being courageous, looking at our feelings. Because denial is so powerful that when I used to work in addiction, much more, people would be drinking a litre bottle of vodka and honestly look at me and say, Ismini, as their therapist, I don't have a problem when their throat was bleeding and they could no longer eat food and their teeth were falling out. And that for them was a real reality. But actually healing and change wasn't possible until they were really able to get to a point, okay, maybe this is hurting me. Maybe there is a benefit for me to stop drinking. Maybe I can feel my feelings now. So I know that you're there, and that's why I know that you've already begun. So the next stage there is planning. When we realize that there's a benefit, so we start to associate pleasure with this change, and we start to associate pain with where we currently are. What that opens up to us then is planning. We can start to ask ourselves, how might we be able to do this? We might start to research, we might start to speak to people. We might start to prepare for this change. And then the next stage, once we've planned, is action. So this is when we can say, okay, great, I've planned, I've thought about it, I can move into action. So that tends to be the exciting part, because this might have taken us quite some time to get to this point of action. The next stage is maintenance. This is more tricky. So action tends to be the most highly energized state, particularly at the beginning, because it's full of possibility and potential. And we're so grateful and relieved. Finally, something different. This is what I've wanted for a long time. Maintenance is actually when we need the most support in lots of ways. Because we all know that at the beginning of a change, it feels exciting, but then when you have to keep showing up and we have to be disciplined and we have to do consistency, the motivation, the enthusiasm starts to fade. So it's very normal in this stage, listen to me, it's very normal at this stage to then lapse or relapse. This is part of the cycle of change. You haven't failed, you haven't got it wrong. We must know that actually this is part of the cycle of change. And that is, lapse is a temporary going back to old thoughts and ways of being, old behaviour. And we will all have lapses and we should expect them and plan for them. These can be amazing learning curves because in that you say, okay, so what wasn't working? What happened there? What tripped me up? What was a trigger? So actually we can learn an awful lot from this. It's a very rich part of the experience. We can also move from lapse back into action. Relapse is more of a longer term going back to old ways of thoughts and behaviours, and then from that place we might actually go back into denial. However, if we also in relapse can bring back in our thinking, learn from the experience, go back into contemplation, again, this is a very powerful way of shifting old thoughts and old behaviours. Because what it helps us access is, whoa, what happened there? What was it that made me want to go back to that baseline? What parts are still unresolved? What is it that I'm finding hard? So again, this is a very powerful part. And yet a lot in relapse, why people go back into denial is that it creates a lot of shame. I'm a failure. I can't do it. It's not that. We all have unconscious triggers. We all have a baseline. So nothing has gone wrong. It's just that somewhere in there that was triggered. And actually that is a very, very important part of the cycle of change. Because once we can process it, the more times that we go through this cycle of change, and we may need to go through these multiple times, because we need to have realistic expectations. If you've been running a pattern for your whole life, it's going to take quite a few times of going through this new way of being before it just becomes unconscious and it becomes easy. And that's why it's important to know about these different stages, to realize and recognize that you're not failing. This is part of your success. This is how you do it. And every time that we go through that, we are changing the neural pathways in the brain. We are instructing ourselves. We are literally rewiring ourselves to be and experience things differently. So wherever you are, just clock it and ask yourself, how do I move to the next stage? Knowing and being proud of the fact that you already have begun. As ever, I'm here to support you wherever you are on that cycle of change. I believe in you. I'm so proud of you for making this change. It is always worth it. It is always worth it. On the other side of this is a different life for you. An elevated life, a happier life, a more accomplished life. Sending you so much love, as ever.